Welcome to today's video. In this one, we're talking about the 5 different things that you need to do in order to level up your photography in 2024 and get that increased reach on social media. And the cool part about today's video and why I'm actually really excited about it is because for the 5 tips, we're actually going to be exploring Old Montreal. Something that I've been wanting to do now for a very long time is come to Montreal in the summer, and after coming in the fall maybe a few years ago, just got me more excited to come back, and today we're finally making it happen. So I've got a few different locations around the old city planned out. It's about 35 degrees today in the heat, so thankfully it's 5:30 in the morning and it's a little bit cooler, but we'll see how hot things actually get as we start rolling through today's tips. Now, the most important thing that you need to know is that photography actually isn't dead on social media. It's actually the most popular and most posted format on the platform. While everybody's still super hyped about Reels and they're all making Reels, thinking that Reels get more reach than photos, that's actually not the case. And that's because in a recent interview, Adam Mosseri, the head of Instagram, actually said that photography is still actually the most often posted format, but the reason why people might be experiencing lower reach is because there's just so much of it. So the platform naturally is placing Reels ahead of a lot of the photography because there isn't a lot of supply of that content format, meaning that for Reels that are created, they're gonna jump the queue. So then the trick, if you still wanna post photography on the platforms, is to actually just make it incredibly more engaging. Otherwise, Reels are gonna still be the thing that you're gonna wanna post if your photography is subpar. So hopefully in today's video, we're gonna be able to show you how to level up your photo game to make sure your photo carousels are on point and actually competitive. So the first location we're gonna be doing that at is at the Ferris wheel of Montreal. We've got a beautiful bridge with an incredible sunrise behind us. So I'm excited to talk about the most important thing to level up your photos first, which is lighting. The reason why it's so important is because different types of light have different types of color schemes. And if you're shooting your photos and your Instagram content, even if it's video related, in the middle of the day, you have a lot harsher light. And that means there's less color and less ability to actually soften up shadows and just make your photos look that much better. So golden hour is pretty much when you want to exclusively make your content if you want it always looking its best, just because you have the ability to soften up your shadows, reduce your highlights, and just add a lot more color to your photography. So golden hour generally takes place at sunrise and sunset, 1 hour after sunrise and 1 hour before sunset, and then blue hour happens before sunset and after, and you can kind of take all of your content in between those like 2-hour windows. So right now at sunrise, we're at the end of it with the Ferris wheel of Montreal right in front of us. We're gonna grab a few of these photos and see how they turn out. So for the second part of today's video, we are gonna talk about photo compositions because there are 3 things that everybody needs to do if they wanna take photos and put them on Instagram in order to make them as engaging as possible. So to explain this concept, we've got the Montreal market behind me, and we're gonna walk around taking these 3 different compositions to show you what I mean. So the first thing that we need to talk about is called the rule of thirds. And for social media, this is an unbelievably important thing to take into consideration. So the rule of thirds basically says that if you were to take a photo like this one and put a grid up on the screen, that your subject and where you want your viewer's eye to go is at any of the points of intersection of that grid. So to keep that in mind, as I'm taking the photo of the market and I'm setting up my composition, I'm putting the tower of the market on one of those points of intersection because I know that that's the main focal point that I want someone's eye to go to. Now, when you're shooting for social media though, you generally want to shoot your photos vertically. And when your photos are posted on Instagram, there's not a lot of screen real estate to mess around with the edges of where the rule of thirds is. So the sort of unspoken thing that you need to do on social media is actually center frame. So you want to take your rule of thirds guidelines and then always place your subject right in the middle. So as opposed to having the market tower up on the left side, I'm actually going to place that into the middle. And for social media and Instagram, that's actually going to lead to a better photo and probably more engagement than if you place it a different way otherwise. All right, now the second thing you want to do to get more engaging photos for Instagram is actually create visual interest in the foreground. A lot of times on Instagram, photos can be really boring because there's just not a lot going on. So the difference that you can set yourself up for is using something called foreground blur in your compositions or foreground interest. Now, as we're shooting the top of this market, what I noticed is that there are these lampposts that are blocking it. And if I set up my composition, again, using the rule of thirds with one of those lights in frame, it's gonna lead to a more interesting photo than if I just took the photo of the market with the top of the tower on it all alone. And the third thing you're gonna wanna do when you're setting up your compositions for social media photography is taking advantage of the environment around you to help capture attention. And there are a ton of different ways that you can do this. Foreground interest is one of them, but that's something that's more on its own because it is so important for making engaging photos. But there are other things like using subframing, leading lines, a frame within a frame, contrast, balance, repeating patterns. These are all different ways that you can set up your photos to be a little bit more interesting. And so now what we're gonna do behind me is show you what subframing is. And a lot of people call this a frame within a frame. And that's when you take a natural frame in your environment and put your subject in the middle of it to help capture a viewer's attention towards that actual naturally occurring frame. And what's really cool about the market is that the pillars actually act as that framing element. So I'm gonna stand right in the middle of it and show you what I mean. All right, so now all we're gonna keep in mind is the rule of thirds as we're doing this. Again, we wanna center frame ourselves as much as possible most of the time. So when I get to the staircase, I'm just trying to get right in the middle so that the pillars actually frame me up, and then you can get a photo looking something like this. All right, so taking into consideration our lighting and our photo compositions, we want to put both of those together and now actually learn how to tell a good visual story. And the reason why is because the only thing you really want to post on Instagram that's photo related lately is photo carousels. And there are a few different tips you need to follow in order to make your photo carousels that much more engaging and actually have them get increased reach as a result. So as we're making our photo carousel, probably the most important thing you need to keep in mind about it is making your photos in a way that they either have a cohesive theme or they communicate something with flow. What I mean by that is a lot of people will either add text on their photo carousels or make their photo carousels like a step-by-step explaining, let's say like a photography concept or just something educational. The goal with doing either of these is just to make sure you're enticing people to swipe all the way through. So I like to make thematic carousels because my reels on my Instagram are more of my educational side. So I'm just always looking to create almost like a little bit of a story as someone's swiping through about the environment I'm in. So the cool part about Old Montreal is that there's so much to actually photograph here and showcase. And we're about to take some of the photos in literally my favorite alley in the entire city. So as I'm creating the photo carousel, I want to make sure that the first photo that I'm taking actually has a lot more of an eye-catching element to it. And the photo of this alley with all of the pink flowers around it is like a top contender. So we just grabbed that shot. And as we're walking through, I'm gonna be looking for a few different things in order to keep the cohesive theme and just keep building visual interest. The first of which is detail shots. Because I've showcased these like pink flowers around the area, we're gonna take photos of them and then incorporate them into the carousel that we're actually making. Okay, so putting it all together, when you have that first photo that catches your viewer's attention, kind of gives them a hint of what it's all about. Okay, in this case, a photo set about Montreal, the theme being we're in Montreal and what it looks like. You need to then make sure that everything you're including in your photo carousel is just up to par with that first photo. So you want to make sure everything you have there is high quality. When you're selecting your photos in your carousel, you want to make sure that they're all adding to the theme or the story that you're trying to tell. So detail shots, when we shot those in that first initial alley, that's a really important component because it moves the story along and it just helps take a viewer a little bit more deeply into what we're trying to communicate. And so if I have any piece of advice for when you're making your carousels, it's just to really think about what you're putting in your photo carousels and why. Have that intention behind it, so that when you have your set of 4 to 8, even 10 images, it's all coming together a lot nicer. And so the next tip then actually comes down to probably one of the more important pieces about social media and posting photo content. And that's that everything that are in your photo carousels needs to be highly shareable. And we kind of talked about it in the beginning, but video content tends to be a little bit more shareable and more engaging than photo content just by default. It's just that video content's harder to do
for most people. And so that's why less people are making it in comparison to photos. So when you're then making your photo carousels, you don't need to make them actually all photos. You can incorporate more videos, and that's gonna make the photo carousel more engaging because people are gonna end up watching those videos all the way through. The number one tip that I can give you is to make your carousels extremely shareable and then more consumable over a long period of time. And that's why the number one predictor of success for a post on social media is actually how many shares it gets. So by having that high quality content, that engaging first post, and really a strong theme that comes through, you're just gonna make people actually wanna share it and give it to more people. So the way we're gonna do that then in this like hybrid tip 4 is we're gonna go shoot some video content to incorporate into our carousel, because right now it's actually 7:50. We haven't had coffee, we've been up since 5. I wanna grab something, there's a really cool cafe, and I wanna include that in my photo carousel. So we're gonna head on over to that now.
Come with me to one of Montreal's most aesthetic coffee shops called Crew Collective and Cafe. It's honestly a pretty cool spot for any creative looking to take a break. And I went here because it is a bank turned into a cafe, and the architecture was fantastic. Coffee was of course 10 out of 10, but make sure you get there early.
The final tip of today's video then is to actually use captions for your photo posts. And the reason why is because everything on Instagram right now is actually running off of SEO and AI image recognition. So if you're posting landscape photos and travel photography, it's not gonna actually know who to send your content to. It's a lot easier if you're a lifestyle influencer because it has a way of recognizing what the audience is that you're trying to reach. With your captions then, you wanna do one of two things. And the first one is to either entertain, writing like a big description about maybe your time in a specific city, or just being like very romantic about what it is you're trying to communicate. Or the second way is to actually offer more educational information. This could be something like a step-by-step, a tips, a review of like your experience doing something. And then this way, all of the words that you're writing in the caption not only will help somebody that's watching your video, but it'll give Instagram a lot of keywords to hook onto in order to circulate your content a lot more to the correct people. So really focus on mastering your captions, and you're gonna see a big jump in your reach as a result. With your reels, it's less so important because a lot of the times if you have a voiceover or there's some sort of words or captions that are directly in the video, Instagram's gonna be able to pick up on those keywords in isolation, and you don't need to provide it more information in your caption to help the platform actually present that content to the right people. So as some final thoughts for today's video, I think all of this really comes down to just finding your style with your photo carousels, because once you package up all of these tips together, you're gonna have a recognizable way of actually posting photo posts, whether that's a combination of photos and videos or just photo posts exclusively. You're gonna be able to make them that much more engaging as a result of following some of the advice in this video, and then bump up your reach if you're struggling with it right now. So with that, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If there's anything specifically you want to see more of as far as tips and tricks go, or you want me to go in more in depth with like photo compositions or different ideas there, let me know in the comments below, and we're gonna make that happen. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.